All right, guys. It's me, Daniel, with VintageMagic.com. I'm with John Stockton.
John Stockton. I guess that's the
Everybody
appropriate theme because we're in Utah.
Guys, everybody pause the video. Guys, everybody pause the video right now. I want you to look up John Stockton, Utah Jazz. That's all I got to say.
What was that, like mid-1990s?
Yes.
Yeah.
Brian, we are in Utah. It's a beautiful place. And
Salt Lake City,
Utah. And, you know, Brian and I actually had a really good conversation. We had a conversation about, and I actually never knew this, the tiers of, or what's it called, tiers? The rank, or types? Archetypes of Magic the Gathering players. Apparently, Mark Rosewater wrote an article about this.
It's actually been discussed. It guides R&D's design, actually, in terms of how they go about constructing Magic sets and appealing to different demographics of players that make up the Magic player base. And it was interesting to me because we were having a conversation at the dinner table, Daniel and two other people, including the person that we came here to meet, a guy named Josh. And over the course of the conversation, I started talking with Josh about the archetypes of Magic players in the game, the way that Magic players are categorized. I'm not sure, where am I supposed to look here?
Oh, that's fine. You're looking wherever you want.
Okay.
I'll sit down. Guys, sorry about that.
Easy for me to talk
Sorry about my high quality video skills, guys.
But anyway, we were talking about the different player types, and I was surprised to hear both Josh and Daniel say that they had never heard of the categorization schemes that WotC uses to talk about players. And so Daniel thought it might make an interesting video for me to just go over those. And if you're already familiar with these, if you've already read Mark's articles or things similar to that, you can probably just stop watching at this point. But in case you haven't heard of the three archetypes, I can give a brief rundown of what they are. And so Magic players in general, and they've actually introduced a fourth archetype more recently, and I'm not going to talk about that because I'm not clear on what it is. I think it's called Vorthis, I think is the most recent style of player.
Vorthis?
Vorthis exists in some weird... Vorthos, maybe, whatever.
Oh, yes. No. I actually
There's a card called Vorthos, I think, or a Planeswalker or something, I don't know. Anyway, but the three that I'm familiar with are Spike, Johnny, and Timmy. And in Magic's design, cards that they create, new cards that are created in new sets, are generally designed to appeal to one of those three type players. And what's more interesting is that, this actually applies to the context of old school as well, old school players also fall into these three categories, although there's less space for at least one of those three types of players to exist, at least in any type of competitive context. So the most common player probably falls somewhere in the middle, probably in the Johnny category, but because I personally am a Spike, I'll talk about the Spike player first. So the Spike player is the consummate competitor. This is the person who goes into a tournament with the singular mindset of, all I care about is victory. Every time you sit down to play a game of Magic, whether it's competitive or if it's a casual game among friends, your number one objective is to win. And victory is how you enjoy the process of playing Magic. It is the end goal. And the way that you accomplish victory is almost inconsequential. It doesn't matter if your opponent gets mana screwed and concedes on turn 2. It doesn't matter if you strip mine his first 3 lands and he concedes in a rage because of that. It doesn't matter if you mana drain and mind twist him and he concedes. It doesn't matter if you destroy all of his permanents in his hand and he concedes that way. Or if you just beat him to death with burn or direct damage. All you care about is winning. That is the goal. That is the singular goal, and that's how you actually enjoy a game of Magic and how you engage with it. So the Spike players are the players who go in, and when a new set comes out, they look through it right away. They look through the spoiler, and they immediately throw away 95% of the cards. Because 95% of the cards are either draft cards, or they're cards that are designed to appeal to the other archetypes. They're designed to appeal to the Johnny or the Timmy. They just want to know the Spike cards. What are the best red burn spells? What are the good new blue counter spells? What are the Planeswalkers like? What are the cards that I can put into my standard or my modern or my legacy deck and go into the next tournament and do well? And often when a set comes out, if it doesn't have some requisite number of new staples, maybe 10, 12, 15 cards that the Spike considers to be tournament worthy, then the Spike players will immediately go on the internet and scream about how the set sucks and that it's a failure. Even though there might be other people who look at the set and go, oh my god, this set has so many amazing tools for my new commander deck and so on. So Spike players make up probably 99% of the pro population. There is a little bit of room for the Johnnies in the Pro Tour, and some Johnny type players have done well historically.
Right.
Some players that come to mind, a player like Alan Comer is an example of a player who sort of walks the line between Johnny and Spike. Obviously a very good and competitive player, But when I get to that, you'll notice he has more Johnny style qualities.
I have a quick question on the spike. This is good and let's just kind of relate to old school. Is the spike player the player or the deck? I'm not saying the deck.
This is a personality. It's a good question, actually. But spike players play spike decks. They play decks that are generally tend to be extremely linear and extremely homogeneous. Lots of 4-ofs. So if you look at most of the deck lists that pro players are using, occasionally due to innovation and inner play testing and stuff and metagaming, their decks might have one or two ofs. But generally, spike type decks are the 4 down the row lists. Right. They want maximum consistency in their deck designs because, again, they don't care about how they win. They just want to win. They just want to win. They don't give a shit about what the outcome is, how they get to that. They just want to win. That's all that matters. Right. And so spike players often can, particularly in certain formats like Commander, for example, can wind up actually alienating part of the population they play against because they want to win and they're not necessarily in agreement with the people that they're sitting down to play against. There can be some acrimony, and often you'll go into a new card store and you can figure out who the spike players are, but they're often ostracized, actually. They go and kind of play in the corner by themselves. And the other players kind of look at them, they look at them warily, and they will say bad things about them because the other players just play to, I'm sure many of you have heard this before, they just play to have fun. Right. So the spike players, people ask me why I always use the deck.
So you're a spike player?
Through and through, yes. Right, absolute consummate spike player. And I've been a spike player in Magic since I started, since day one. Right. And there obviously these archetypes didn't exist because nobody really understood the game at that point. But from the very, very beginning, from when I really sat down and played my first constructed game of Magic, when I first built my first deck, my objective was I just want to figure out how to win this game better than anyone else. I want to sit down and feel like I have an advantage every time I play. And I'm going to utilize and abuse whatever cards are available to me, whatever abusive cards that are not restricted. So the first deck that I built, the deck had 4 copies of Mind Twist, 4 copies of Library of Alexandria in it, which was entirely designed around the 2 most abusive cards that were still unrestricted at that point, because all I cared about was just twisting your hand away and killing you with Library of Alexandria.
And the reason why you play the deck isn't just because you were the creator of it. It's because it's your
the
opinion,
best, right? I mean, obviously, I've played this deck tens of thousands of times at this point. I've been playing it for 24 and a half years.
And you've played other decks.
Of course.
Just tell everybody that you've played.
Oh, I've played everything. Okay. And I played in Pro Tours I played a black-red deck in a Pro Tour once. I played blue-white in a Pro Tour, like a Howling Mind deck in Nationals. I played a Living Death deck in Worlds. I played tons of different styles of decks, whatever decks I've determined to be the best. But at the time, when it comes down to a format like old school, where things are consistent and don't change as much and you're not trying to innovate all the time, I just play the deck that I think is the best because I'm a spike, and obviously I feel that the deck is the best and has the maximum flexibility.
All right, last spike question. It's kind of a short one. See if you can just give me a quick answer on this one. As a spike player, do you ever not, like if you're playing with friends or whatever, do you ever let people win or just kind of just have fun more, just kind of randomly make a choice? Like do you just mulligan, like just keep a hand and you're supposed to mulligan? Or do you always do the right thing?
No, that's a good question.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel that because my investment in every game is with this one particular outcome in mind, and then I'm working towards that outcome, I don't let people win. Never.
Wow. You hear that, guys?
Yeah.
That's very different mentality. Some people just want to try different things. So you go ahead and explain the
next.
Yeah,
well, the thing is, I may feel compassion for you when we're playing, and I certainly countless times have empathized with my opponent when we're playing and said, man, it really sucks that, for example, you haven't resolved a spell this game, or that you didn't have any mana, or that I destroyed all your land because I had Crucible Strip Mine on turn 2, that kind of thing. Yeah. I'll let them know that I feel for them. I feel their pain. I understand what it feels like to be in this position.
But the winning is...
But I'm not going to just lose to you. I'm not going to go easy on you. I'm still going to just try to beat you no matter what, because that's what I'm working towards. That's what I feel an honest game of Magic is. Right. I want every game to have this authenticity to it, where we sit down and you're going to get my best from me. I'm not going to screw around. I'm not.
That's why I love playing against you and talking about Magic is that reason. Do you think that there is sub-archetypes of each category, like the Johnny's next?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like you have more of the asshole type of the asshole type of spike who is so like.
Well, then you're getting more into just individual personality and less
okay.
into actual player archetype.
But this is
Certainly, there's a whole spectrum. There's nice spikes. I consider myself a nice spike.
You're a nice
spike.
spike.
I'll be you, but I'll be cordial. I'll be polite to you while I'm doing it, right?
It's true, guys.
I'm sure we've all met plenty of asshole spikes, right?
Yes.
And those people are super obnoxious, and I don't enjoy being around those people or playing with them. And they usually wind up being somewhat ostracized from their play groups anyway, because no one wants to play with them. And any game store has people like that.
Is the guy we played, by the way, side note, Brian and I played Two-Headed Giant at Barnes & Noble's. And one of the guys we played that was throwing the cards.
He was a kid. He was
throwing cards at him and stuff. Is that considered, was he like...
I honestly think that kid was just
mad.
No, I don't think he was mad. I think he was a little along the spectrum or something. Like he was just...
Okay.
He basically just... I think that he didn't understand how kind of rude his actions appeared to be.
Is he considered a spike? Because he wants to...
It's too hard for me.
It's all right.
In the context of just a seal.
So you can't just pick someone based on a seal. Okay. All right, so let's go on the video. Let's go with the next one. Johnny, spell that for us because I have different spellings for Johnny, right?
Johnnny.
Okay. So with a Y, like Johnny. Like
Johnny Magic.
Johnny
Magic.
Magic.
Do you want to do a separate video for it, or do you want to...
Continue. No, it's running.
Okay, we'll just... All right, so the Johnny Magic player falls in the middle between the Spike player and the Timmy player. And I would say that a bulk of the Magic playing population falls into the Johnny category. It's a much broader category, and I think it has more of a continuum. On the far end of the Johnny spectrum, you have people... I have some good friends of mine, actually, who are like this, who are the Alan Comers of the world, basically. People who are very competitive, play at a very high level, want to win. But the difference is that they do care how they get there. They care about how they go about winning the game, and they want to be innovative. I think Edwin, the Magic Engineer, is a really good example of this. He's a person who clearly is good at the game. He wants to win. He's competitive. He derives pleasure from winning, but he doesn't want to use the same deck as everybody else. He wants to innovate. He wants to get there in a way that other people haven't tried. He wants to try something new, and he wants to arrive at victory, but through his own kind of unique fashion. And Johnny decks tend to be built along these lines. They'll tend to include cards. They often will include pet cards, cards that are a little bit off the beaten path, cards that are a little bit more combo oriented. They still tend to be streamlined, and they're not playing with cards that are just totally out of the blue, cards that you would never see anyone else use. But they'll tend to use something that's a little bit more esoteric, and the general strategy would be really different. So, for example, getting back to Edwin tried apparently for years to innovate on a turbostasis deck that works in old school. And he experimented with all sorts of different cards that work in that archetype, and eventually constructed something that he was very proud of, and he felt it was a really good representation of that archetype in the old school format. I think that because the format it's so fast, and it contains all of this artifact mana, and it contains people are running 4 main deck copies of Disenchant and have tons of red blasts on the sideboard. I think the archetype is fundamentally kind of doomed to failure because too many people have tools to defeat it. But at least he was trying stuff, and he tried using cards like Winter Orb in his Stasis deck, which is a really interesting idea. I've never seen anyone trying to use Winter Orb in a Stasis deck before. It almost seems like it's kind of counterintuitive based on what the deck is trying to do. He didn't use Kismet, which I thought was a problem, and ultimately made his deck worse, but he was using a red component, which no one's ever used in Turbostasis, so that allowed him to play with Blood Moon and Atog on the sideboard, all sorts of innovations. And I've come across players like this all the time, and their decks tend to be really interesting because they'll take a very established archetype and then they'll tune it very slightly and throw in a few singletons. And the other thing about Johnny's, too, that makes them very different from Spikes is that they're always innovating. They're always iterating on their deck. They're never happy with its current form because they'll have a game where one particular situation happens and they didn't have the right tool at the right time to deal with that, or their combo didn't work quite the way it was supposed to. So they'll take one card out and put another card in. They're never satisfied. They're always innovating. So again, the Johnny type player, which makes up, I think, a bulk of Magic players, and certainly I think a lot of old school players are like this, is they want to win. They care about winning. They're competitive. But again, they want to win on their own terms. That's how they derive pleasure from a game of Magic. And if they don't win, but they still manage to sort of show their opponent their creativity, they're still satisfied with the outcome of the game. A lot of Commander players in particular are Johnny players as well.
Right.
I think that's the most common Commander player for sure, is the Johnny type player. And they've got their little innovations and tweaks and stuff, and they want to show you their cool interaction, their cool combo, even if they didn't get it going during the game. And if it came up, they're really satisfied and they feel really pumped up, even if they didn't wind up winning the game. So
So as a Spike player, do you feel when you come across a Johnny player?
Yeah.
Do you honestly do you do you find it fascinating what they're trying to innovate, or do you just
It's a good question.
you know what I mean? Like, do you just?
I mean, it really depends a lot on their attitude.
Sure.
Truthfully, I mean, I think that their attitude, because a lot of the Johnny players, particularly when they face a pure Spike player, they'll often get really frustrated because they're kind of like, well, why don't you let me do my thing?
Right.
And what you'll often find is Johnny players, particularly the more casual ones, you'll see this on Magic Online a lot. They'll title the games that they host "No Counterspells, Please," which is interesting because you're sort of saying, well, why are you putting a limitation on the game? You'll join. You know you're going to play a Johnny player the moment you see that. When you see the no counterspells thing, because they clearly have an objective. They want to be able to do their thing, and they get really pissed if they're not able to kind of do their thing, even if their thing is insanely degenerate. And I've played against people that are playing crazy decks, like storm decks and stuff.
Give me an example of
with a tagline saying "No counterspells, please." It's like, what are you talking about? No counterspells. I'm just going to sit there and let you goldfish kill me on turn 3.
Give me an example of in your past, just some of the like a Johnny deck that's just very memorable to you. Just so I bet you there's so many, obviously, but it doesn't have to be obviously you said the word degenerate. Yeah. I think that's interesting. Like,
well, there's a fine line between a lot of the sort of Johnny style decks are a lot of the early combo decks were like that, I would say, because until combo really got a lot of its modern tools, a lot of them faster mana, and until people really figured out and tutors in particular, the introduction of all the tutors that appeared in Mirage really jumped the combo archetype forward. The first real combo deck that did well in old school, as it was back then, it was actually called Type 1, was a deck called Storm Drain, which utilized the interaction of Storm Cauldron, which was printed in alliances, with Fastbond, and the rule at the time that said that you didn't die until the end of the phase. And because of that, if you had Fastbond and Storm Cauldron in play, it generated infinite mana. You could play a land under Fastbond, tap it for mana, tapping it returned it to your hand. Because of Storm Cauldron, you could immediately replay it, paying a life, tap it again, tap it again, tap it again, and you could do that forever. And because you didn't die until the end of the turn, you'd go down to negative 40 life or whatever, and then you'd cast a Drain Life for lethal damage. And that was sort of the original combo deck, although it didn't propagate much. But the first original combo deck was the deck that Mike Long used, the archetype that Mike Long used to win Pro Tour Paris, which of course is the Prosperous Bloom.
I love that. Yeah, and by the way, you can explain that, right? The combo.
I mean, yeah, the combo is pretty straightforward, but
not right now. But I've always wanted to. There's a reason why. It's a sentimental thing. My friend Nick that passed away with cancer.
Yeah,
he loved that. He loved Mike Long's personality in that combo. It's the innovation.
Well,
I mean, it was just
you
fun.
Never met him.
I know, but it was just watching him on camera. But he actually collected some of the art of it, and so I've never understood how to do the combo. So, and I've looked online for someone to explain to me actually how to do the combo.
It's pretty
simple. Okay, but let's talk about let's talk about next.
It just involves getting a lot of cards in your hand, discarding them to Cadaver's Bloom, and casting the lethal drain.
All right, guys. Next, we're gonna talk about Timmy. Hold on to your seats. Hold on a second. All right, guys. Brian did some decorating. Nice prints back there.
Interior decoration.
Interior decoration. All right, let's talk about the Timmy category. We're back talking about the 3 archetypes of Magic players. What is a Timmy? I mean, and by the way, how do you spell Timmy for this video?
Timmy. It's pretty straightforward. It's spelled exactly how it sounds.
All right.
But yeah, Timmy is. I think that Timmy is a little hard to define. There is definitely some blurring between Johnny and Timmy, but the way that my understanding of Timmy is that Timmy is the kid who loves to cast big-ass monsters, or the player who loves to do big, flashy things. He's the guy that saw the card Omniscience and didn't think, wow, Academy Rector would put this into play if I have Phyrexian Tower or whatever. He looked at it and said, oh my god, man, 10 mana. As soon as I get to 10 mana, slam that, and I can play anything in my deck. And Timmy is the player that when he looks at a set, he goes for the biggest and flashiest things first, the big, incredibly insane, expensive spells. And he derives pleasure not from winning, not from being particularly innovative.
Not from winning?
Not from winning.
At all?
Not at all. No.
Could care less.
Winning could not care less about it, yes. Because all he cares about is just doing something big and flashy that gives him his big dopamine hit and makes him feel excited and gets his pulse racing. That's how he derives pleasure from the game. He'll be sad Timmy gets sad if you prevent him from doing his big thing. when you counterspell or you mana drain Timmy's big creature, he gets really sad. If you sort of Plowshare's creature, you steal it, he gets really sad. But if he gets to play his big thing, he's satisfied with the outcome of the game, regardless of whether or not he actually wound up winning it. And I'd say that Timmy is much more of the mindset. I don't think that there's a lot of veteran players who are Timmy players, and there's no room in old school for Timmy at all, unfortunately. And it's not Timmy's fault. It's just they haven't really made the Timmy cards yet.
Right.
Most of Timmy's cards have come along later on because they started to really target him as a player. And they said, well, there is this person out there. Either he's a beginner or he's a player that just thinks really, really far outside the box, and he's a role-playing gamer. You know, he's a D&D player who just happens to play Magic sometimes with his friends because they drag him to Friday Night Magic or whatever. But the Timmy player wants to just do cool shit. He doesn't care about winning. He wants to sit there and I've played against Timmy players in Commander games too. And it's very difficult to be in that environment with someone because being a spike, the decks that I play, regardless of whether or not they're super streamlined, rip your face off combo decks or 1v1 duel decks, or whether or not I'm playing a more casual, and this is my version of casual, but a more casual budget style deck, they're still very streamlined, they're still oppressive, they're still designed to prevent my opponent from doing what they want. And the Timmy is never going to have any fun playing against me because he's just not going to be able to do anything. And Timmy's invariably either mature as players usually. They grow and they begin to understand what fundamentally matters in Magic, and they start to remove the big high-end spells from their deck. They start to add more lands to their deck. They gradually come to understand what will result in them maybe winning 1 in 10 games. And gradually drift over probably into Johnny territory. I don't think that there's Timmys who play for long periods of time.
Got it.
But that said...
So are the Timmy players the ones, to clarify, are they the ones that come in and out of Magic quite often, pretty quickly?
I think that it's more... I don't think that they come back, would be my guess. They definitely design cards for Timmy. And you can hear this if you've been to... I don't know how many pre-releases you've been to. You can hear the Timmys in the room, actually. They're very vocal. Because they'll open up their booster packs and you hear them exclaim, oh my god, I got blah. Like, I got this thing. And I go, cool, I'm not very familiar with the spoiler. I'm going to go look over at the guy, what he opened. This guy's freaking out about some idiotic, ridiculous thing that costs 8.
Wow.
Right? I know when I hear that, I'm looking at a Timmy.
Right.
And
so are like Emeralds, is that a Timmy card?
No, Emrakul is a spike card, actually.
Oh, interesting.
But it's an interesting card.
So that's a very high casting cost.
Right, but it's an interesting card because it's a spike card disguised as a Timmy card. It's brilliant design, although the card is fundamentally bad because Emrakul has proven to be a really huge problem in multiple formats because the spike cards exist to allow you to get Emrakul into play for practically nothing. They left off stuff, like they left off the Phage ability from Emrakul. You know, basically, if this thing entered play from anywhere but your hand, you lose.
Right.
It needs to say that because it's too easy, and Emrakul causes huge problems in the format. It was a legal card when Wizards of the Coast introduced their 1v1 Magic Online Commander format a couple of years ago, and I helped curate the ban list for the initial announcement of that, and we completely missed Emrakul as a problem because I looked at it and I said, well, this card it's 15 mana, right? You can't not make it 15 mana unless you can't animate it for one because it can't go to the graveyard. And there's a few ways to cheat it into play with sneak attack, and you can put it into play with show and tell. We completely missed polymorph effects though. Completely missed that. And as a result, it made it into the initial set or into the initial format as an unbanned card. It's banned in regular Commander for this very same reason. It's just too easy to get it out. But it completely ruined and warped the 1v1 Commander format online for months and months until it finally got banned.
That's very interesting. That is a great example of like you said, a very expensive casting cost card that is like really a spike card.
It's really a spike card, yeah. But it's a spike card masquerading as a Timmy
card.
Because the Timmys see it and they go, well, 15 mana, that's a lot. But, I had 15 mana the other day. I could probably cast that. And certainly if I play with my Urza lands or whatever, I can get it out, man. That's exciting. And casting a 15 mana thing that's ridiculous. It's Time Walk.
Right.
It's a 15/15 flyer that's immune to most targeting.
Right.
And it annihilates 6 when it's
insane.
How can anything in the game be better than that?
Right.
And I have a son who's almost 9 now, and it's interesting watching him. He's learning Magic now, and it's been interesting watching his binder evolve from Timmy to Johnny over the last couple of years.
That's interesting.
He was absolutely a Timmy from the age of about 4 and a half, when he started to be able to read a little bit. up to maybe last year when he started to play more games with Magic. And so I look at his binder and it's like, yeah, World Gorger Worm or whatever. Like it's a 15-15 and a 12-12 and a 13-13. It's just like all of these giant monsters because kids are Timmies, right? Even though adults can be Timmies too, but kids are definitely Timmies by default.
By default.
And Desi's binder has now been evolving. The Timmies have been relegated, or the Timmy cards have been relegated to the back of the binder and now have been rotated completely out. And now he's got Planeswalkers in the front of his binder. And he's got his prized possession, his masterpiece Aether Vial that he opened up a couple of weeks ago.
That is definitely not a Timmy card.
Definitely not a Timmy card at all.
All right, Brian, thanks again for your time. Guys, what do you guys think? Put in the comments below. Tell me, are you a Spike, Johnny, or Timmy? And why? Did you agree with Brian's assessment and Mark Rosewater's assessment, basically?
Yeah, well, this has
been going on for years. Yeah. I mean, this has been going on for what, since the beginning of time?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, to me, it's common information, but the fact that you had never heard
this is actually very interesting.
Yeah, I thought that we both thought that maybe there might be a cross section of your viewership who wasn't familiar with the archetypes too and might be interested to hear about it.
All right, thanks for your time, Brian. Yeah, take care.